Aron, my question is that you and I have similar paths in terms of seeking knowledge. We wound up in places where we didn't really expect to. We found out we knew a lot more about what we thought we did, and then we found people that helped us find a path that enlightened us. The next step, which Deborah Clark talked about, is how did you turn, Walker, I'll get it right sooner or later.
We'll get it eventually.
Yeah. How did you go from somebody seeking knowledge, comfort in that knowledge, and then sharing that knowledge with others? Because the problem is too many people do learn something and don't share it.
I had the advantage in that I was raised in an exclusively creationist community. Every single person I had ever met was a creationist until my teen years. I was the only person I knew who was not a creationist and never had been. In the particular culture that I grew up in, they tended not to indoctrinate children until you reach the age of reason, being about 8. By then, a first grade teacher had given me a book on dinosaurs, and that book on dinosaurs included a phylogenetic tree. I understood it. Not having been pre-programmed not to, it made sense. And so when I was brought a book that was told to be the absolute truth, my immediate response was, no it isn't, look what it says here. And my secondary response was, it doesn't even explain why we are apes. And that was an argument I'm still waiting for an answer for. And as far as being comfortable in the knowledge, I'm only comfortable in the knowledge in that I tested, and to some degree it surpasses. The most advances I've ever made have been the moments when I was proven wrong and was forced to rethink, reconsider, and completely change my perspectives. It's happened 2 or 3 times. I argued against Big Bang cosmology and had my ass handed to me. I once argued, many of you I think have seen the video where I prove that humans are monkeys, not just related to monkeys, not just descended from monkeys, not similar to them, we are monkeys. I had that argument from the other side, and again, got my ass handed to me. Oddly enough, in all the debates I've had over religion and whatnot, the two that were the most heated, the most antagonistic, the angriest and longest, most protracted debates I've ever had were over whether or not humans are monkeys. And I've been on both sides of that particular argument. I'm only secure in my knowledge in as far as my knowledge proves itself. And I can't embrace it.
But you went from making videos on YouTube for the fun of it, your joy, or maybe your friends. Then you went to 30,000 subscribers in X amount of time. And how many people in your private life know that you do videos?
That's where I was going with this.
Okay. I think I have an answer to that. I felt politically motivated in that I live in Texas, where the powers that be, for lack of a better word to describe that collective that governs that state, were determined to lie to our children. In some cases, I was able to get people courting the Board of Education to admit to me that there were transitional species in the fossil record, but that they wanted to teach that there never were any transitional species in the fossil record, where a statement made by one person says there are very few, and then he says there are none. Which is the right answer? Well, we're going to teach that there are none. How can you teach that there are none? Because it's not as important what the facts are. It's only important that we convince the children to believe the way we want them to. That's what the government in my state is trying to do. To me, it doesn't matter what I want to believe. It only matters what is really true and how true it is. It's not a dichotomy. It's not is it true or is it false. Chances are it's going to be in the middle. And there's going to be an error in everyone's perspective. And if you can't admit that, that's the error. I'm sorry, I started ranting.
No, stop.
This girl, as a favor to my daughter, was going to go to New Mexico and pick up this car and drive it back. My daughter suddenly came across 2 cars. and needed help to get one back. I rode this other girl out there on a motorcycle because I wanted to. And she asked me at some point along the road, I'm wearing a Darwin t-shirt as I'm on this bike, and she was from this little teeny town in South Texas where they were very religious, where they were taught things in church like dinosaurs didn't exist. My daughter came home from these churches saying this, but they were taught in the church dinosaurs didn't exist. These are people that were, didn't believe in medicine, some of them, okay? This is how extreme they are. So this girl tells me that you can't prove evolutionism. I said, well, that's the first problem. You've been indoctrinated to death. It's not an ism. But yes, I can prove it. And she said, well, prove it then. And I said, well, I can't prove it standing here in a Denny's parking lot, but I will prove it. Just give me some time, we'll slap it together. The foundational falsehoods of creationism began with a debate that I had with the Board of Education and the people trying to subvert our education, and culminated in her challenge to prove the evolutionary perspective and simultaneously prove that the creationism argument was entirely wrong. They make statements of science that can be tested, and they have all invariably failed. So we can't teach them. In the debate that I had with these particular people on the Board of Education, they had a list of weaknesses of evolution that they wanted to teach. All of them were systematically proven wrong in my first post, but they didn't care. They wanted to teach it anyway, even though they know it's already been proven wrong. That's what motivated me. That's why I did the series. I'm sorry, I'm ranting too much.
No, keep going.
No, I'm going to move to the next question.
Hi. I wonder if it's possible to have the educational boards across the country make it mandatory to watch the movie Religious. I mean, that's a wonderful educational facility and opens the eyes of many people, I'm sure.
The movie Religious was an entertaining thing to see. I'm sorry, were you done with your question?
Yeah.
Okay. The movie was entertaining, and I thought that Bill Maher did much better than I thought he would. But what I would still prefer to see, rather than any one-side perspective, I'd like to see testable data on everything. So when we're talking about having what the school boards have to look at, I want to see more than just a movie. I want to see more than just my perspective. I want something that is shown, yes, this is correct, here's the consensus showing so, and here's the data showing so, and this is what we're going to have to teach because of it.
I question why you dismiss it as just a movie. I thought it was...
I'm not dismissing it. I'm not dismissing it.
Yeah.
He made valid points. There were also included in that opinions. When you're talking about science, and we need to if we're talking about education, it matters that every detail be correct. And that's all I'm talking about. When you talk about religious, you may have 100 accurate statements and observations. There may be one or two things that don't belong there. I've run across these in my own videos where I would have said something and realized, no, that's not quite right, it's actually this. You know, on occasion you need to make a correction. I want all corrections accounted for.
They don't.
No, they don't want any corrections. Granted. But then of course that's the difference between the way the science mind works and the way of a propagandist, where they just want you to believe a certain way. They will color it however they need to. I don't need to. I can take the straight out facts.